Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back with our episode 13 predictions and power rankings. Only 2 episodes left, and we are bringing back one of our favorites, Survivor Jamal at gmail.com. That's his name. Don't wear it out.
That's me.
He's got it right there. Jamal Shipman from Survivor Island of the Idols is back, and you got a tough challenge ahead of you, Jamal. You got a double boot episode in the penultimate episode right before we're getting into the return challenge here.
That's so true. Yeah, when people found out that I was doing this, that's all people would message me. They would be like, "Oh man, you have it tough. You're gonna be tough to predict." Like, well, yeah, this is it, right? This is the good stuff. So
exactly. And how are you feeling about this season as a whole? I mean, we're almost at the end. We got 7 people left. How you feeling?
It's good. It's good. It's good. It's just good. It's a good season of Survivor. Like quality gameplay, character development, moves. I think we've struck the right balance of how to do Edge of Extinction. I think this whole fire token thing is great. I'm really excited to see how that pans out. I'm all in on Survivor Winners at War. It's a good show. Absolutely.
That's good to hear because we were saying this right before we were live, and anyone who's tuned in for the past season, we've been complaining a lot, but especially with fire tokens, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm
ready to defend it. So whatever complaints you got, I'm ready to explain why you're wrong, and I'm ready to explain why it makes for amazing Survivor play. Yeah.
And I think the one thing that we do all agree on, though, is the fire tokens. We'll argue with you about Edge of Extinction until
Frozen
we're blue in the face. But fire tokens, Alexa and I are all in on fire tokens. I was frozen.
You probably made a really good point, but we missed it. How do you feel about how Edge of Extinction is going this season? That one's been pretty controversial for obvious reasons, but it's sort of everyone's weighing everything differently because everyone who we grew up loving is there now. So obviously we want to see them, but the principle of why they're there is maybe not everyone's cup of tea.
That's fine. I mean, the whole point, if you listen to Jeff Probst talk about Edge of Extinction ever, it's about giving these amazing Survivor characters more time and more space to delve into their Survivor story, right? And so Edge of Extinction the first time was really controversial because we didn't really care about them that much. I mean, Reem, we grew to care about because she was such an amazing character. But after a while, you're just like, what are they doing there? They need to go to Ponderosa. They're out of the game. Why are they doing this? But I think with these specific characters, with this specific history, with the kinds of stories they're telling, like how do you with a straight face say that we didn't need to see Ethan Zahn's story arc, right? Like how do you not just root scream from the rafters when Natalie is being a beast? Like this is exactly why Edge of Extinction was created, and we're getting it. This is it right here.
And I think that talking about it this way, I think also that's why if you go back and you look at a season like Blood versus Water, I think that's the best iteration of Redemption Island because we cared about the players who were going to Redemption Island. And we had Rupert and Candace, and as people got voted out, even if you didn't necessarily care about who was voted out, you still cared maybe about their loved one. When Rachel gets voted out, we had no relationship with Rachel at all as a Survivor community, but we cared about Tyson. So many of us cared about Tyson that when you saw that happen, you're like, man, how can you not root for Tyson right now? Right. So I think that when you have when you have a history with these players, it makes much more sense. I don't think that Edge of Extinction should come back unless they do a returning player season. And I've said this, I've complained about Edge of Extinction a lot on this season. I really have, but I'm also okay with it because we could have gotten 3 episodes of Ethan Zahn. We could have gotten 2 episodes of Danny. We could have gotten I'm happy we've gotten a lot of content for people that we know we're probably never going to see on our TV again anyway. So I'm glad we're getting the most out of them that we can in this historic season. Just make sure none of them win. No offense to any of them, but I don't want somebody voted out to win the game.
It's not going to happen this time. That's prediction number 1. It's not going to happen. This whole cast saw season 38. I think they're all set to not have that repeat. But what I'll add though is, so Edge of Extinction is great because of the storytelling and we get to see these people that we care about. But I also am really loving the integration of the Edge of Extinction into the gameplay. And I think people think that's a controversial thing, but I love that it influences the strategy of who to vote out. So what I was saying early on in the season is I thought it was a mistake to get rid of Natalie first for the reason of separating Jeremy and Natalie. I thought that was a huge mistake because they literally set up Jeremy to have someone on the other side feeding him advantages and tokens or whatever it was. And so they should have thought about that. And I wonder if there are conversations where they're picking up on that, where they're starting to say, let's not vote this person out because if they do get to the Edge of Extinction, they're going to be in this person's corner and he'll be that much more powerful in the game. I just wonder. So I like that it adds that extra dimension.
Phil, how do you feel about that?
I agree with early in the game. I think now we're too far along where like anybody who gets voted out now is not going to really impact it that dramatically. Like even if Sarah were to get voted out, she'd probably blame Tony. Yeah. If Tony were to get voted out, he'd probably be mad at Sarah. If Ben gets voted out, he's going to be pissed at everybody. But early on, like especially like coming from my family, every conversation I would have with them early in the season was based around how much they hated that this game was being rigged for Boston Rob to win. And I know that that's going to piss off all of the Boston Rob fans, but I mean, at this point, there's no going back on where I'm at. So, but it starts to feel like it's like Amber gets voted out and now she can give Rob whatever she wants. And this was something we talked about in the preseason a lot. It was, why would you like, you have to get rid of Boston Rob or Amber. You have to split them up before they can play together. But then you actually start to realize like when one of them is on edge and one of them is in the game, you actually have less control over them than you do if you can see both of them in your tribe. Right. And what they're doing every day. It's really interesting with that.
Yeah, well, I'm actually all the way on the other side of the fence on this one in that I think it is not an awful thing to be allied with a power couple. And I wonder why people don't make that decision more often. Like this whole energy of like, nope, got to split them up. They're a power couple. That's really dangerous. If you're the one who is allied with the power couple and you have like the ear of the rest of the tribe, then that is the biggest shield ever, right? You just hold those two up in front of yourself every single vote and keep them around as long as you can manage that. So I actually think it would have been really smart for someone to say, no, I want to keep Natalie and Jeremy. I want to keep Sarah and Tony. I want to keep Amber and Rob because they're the ones that are going to get the heat first when the target starts spinning around.
Exactly.
And a very underrated move on that was when Jeremy and Michele decided to get rid of Ethan rather than getting rid of Parvati and Boston Rob because they both felt if we keep Parvati and Boston Rob, they're always going to be bigger threats than us. Yeah. And so let's keep them and get rid of Ethan, who is a great guy and ultimately could win this thing. We don't feel like Parvati and Boston Rob can.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, I went to Jeremy and Michele's watch party for one of their big episodes, and they revealed to the audience that it was Jeremy that wanted to work with Rob and it was Michele that wanted to work with Parvati. So the two of them working together was like, all right, let's go ahead and cut off the fifth wheel here and try to make this foursome. So yeah, really smart on their part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would have been a good group of four right there.
Yeah, for sure.
But they all voted off Natalie Anderson first, and then they just went on an epic losing streak. But hey,
yeah, that's something we had talked about last week. If Natalie Anderson isn't voted out first, that whole tribe might not even end up at tribal council because we've seen what she can do in challenges, especially these endurance ones. So they might have really shot themselves in the foot there.
Such a beast.
And I know some of these guys are older now. Like I get that, but like she is running laps around Tyson and Yule. Yep. And like even Boston Rob's older, he's heavier than he was, like we get it. But Boston Rob was so good at challenges in his heyday. And still like, yeah, he had a rough go of it this season a little bit, but in Heroes, Villains, and in especially in Redemption Island, he was really good at challenges and they were just running circles around them. I mean, Natalie and Sophie, I was very impressed with Sophie because you almost expect it from Natalie. Sophie, it was like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all props to her. Like I've been on her forever. She was one of my picks. I think she is amazing. I think she would be the most feel good story to come back from Edge of Extinction. I don't think anybody could complain about that. If Natalie Anderson makes it back into the game, this final tribal, this final challenge, whatever it is, everyone would be like, yeah, obviously that's exactly how that should play out. I am fine with that. That's great. If she wins, maybe people would have a hard time with that, but I would love for her to come back. She is amazing.
I think that the consensus would probably be there's like 2 people or 3 people would really be happy with right now, in my opinion. I think Natalie is one of them. I think Yule is one of them because I think people really grew to love Yule on this season. And then I think the third one would be Ethan. I think if Ethan somehow came back, people would just be like, this guy, like that, like just the way.
Too. I think people would lose their mind over her.
Yeah.
Parvati kind of for a different reason. I feel like Parvati more because they're huge fans of Parvati anyway. I feel like the other 3, like, it's really like just based on like what we've seen on this season. Like Ethan with his whole, like everything he says is like so emotional. If he were to come back that moment, like Jeff would need tissues the entire time. There's no way he'd be able to get through that. So, but yeah, so we're getting down to it, and it seems like this is probably the last episode we're going to see any type of life on Edge of Extinction, because I'm assuming that the finale is just going to start off where they're going to just do the challenge. Somebody's going to come back in. So do you think we've seen a lot of Edge of Extinction this season? Do you think that there's anything big planned for this, like last, for this, the group that's there now when 2 more people are going to be voted out? Do you think there's anything big planned for like right now that we're going to see this episode that maybe we haven't seen yet?
That's a good question. I don't think so. Right. I don't think so. I think they got the message about how people feel about Edge of Extinction. I think they're going to just let it ride out the way it did last time. We do have to add some story to the Edge of Extinction about how these fire tokens eventually play out, right? So why have they been killing themselves for coconuts and logs? You know what I mean? Like what was that all about? Is it just to get advantages in this challenge? Is it just to buy an idol when they get back in the game? Maybe there's some kind of twist there. But other than that, I think it's let's resolve the fire token storyline at Edge of Extinction, and let's figure out who's getting back in the game, and then off to Ponderosa you go. I think that's it for Edge of Extinction.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Sorry, my internet keeps freezing, but I can hear you. I heard everything you said, and I do agree with you. I do completely agree. I think we're going to get one more thing from Edge of Extinction. I just don't know what that one more thing is going to be.
They have to take 40 logs and 40 coconuts all the way back to shelter.
Yeah.
And this is something we talked about with Nick Marano. We were saying that, like, if these challenges, he brought up a really good point. Like, imagine if this was in the regular game, like Tony had to go grab like 20 coconuts and then he could get fire tokens for that. I wonder if this is going to be something that does kind of come back into the Survivor game in future seasons, like these really like endurance based challenges for people.
I don't want them to, right? Like I think, right, Survivor is good, right? Survivor is good enough as is. I think the Edge of Extinction, I think what they learned the first time around is they needed to do more with it if they were going to have it. Like, they're going to do it, they got to do it. They can't just have them sitting out there, wasting away the whole time. That doesn't make for too interesting a story. And with these long endurance challenges, it fits into what the point of Edge is, which is how much do you want it? How much does it, how much are you willing to sacrifice and push yourself and your body? And, how much do you love the game and all of that? And so it's the perfect challenge for what the Edge of Extinction is supposed to do for us as a story. But I don't know that placing those kinds of challenges inside the game of Survivor is necessarily what needs to happen. I hope it doesn't.
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess it could, because if it doesn't replace an immunity challenge, then that's just, I guess that's kind of what camp life sort of becomes, just Tony walking back and forth, picking up 50 logs. Maybe if a way to, because I mean, apparently reward challenges happened this season, we just didn't see them. Maybe it's a way to replace reward challenges, but yeah, I'm not sure. I think if it's just for day-to-day life, I also think that might exhaust them, but clearly for the Edge people, they're surviving.
Yeah. Well, it shows you how much they are suffering, that peanut butter is like this coveted gold out there. Like, people like break themselves to get a scoop of peanut butter. It's pretty remarkable.
I have never craved peanut butter before. I'm not a big sweets fan, and it's not my go-to protein source, but there must be something. Like, when you were out there, did you at any point crave peanut butter?
No, I didn't. I think I told you guys the last time we talked that it was banana bread for me, that for some reason, and I wasn't craving it until it was in front of me, and then I was like, this is I would eat this whole loaf of bread. So yeah, no, for me, when I was out there, the food wasn't as much of a factor for me. It wasn't like it wasn't what broke me. It wasn't something that was on the front of my mind. I dealt with the hunger pretty well. But yeah, I think maybe just the Edge of Extinction and the you just have so much less than even in the game of Survivor that's what it becomes. It becomes peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
So now how do you feel about the fact that some of these winners step down in the challenge for peanut butter? Because they're not on Edge. How did you feel about 3 winners stepping down?
Yeah, bad move. Obviously, Kim feels that way for sure. Maybe a little saving face. I hear people saying like, "Oh, well, she was falling down already, and so if she could get some peanut butter and before she okay," but I don't know. I would have assumed that there was a little bit more fight and a little more competitive edge. I never was a fan of stopping your challenge for food at all. Like that. Like how comfortable must you feel that you feel like you could do that, And I know Nick says that was a good move for him because at least he got a fire token and all that. And, okay, but I don't know. When I was out there, I just felt very competitive, and I felt like I was not going to lose a challenge because I decided to lose the challenge. I was going to lose because my body said, "That's it, you're done." And so yeah, I was disappointed in that. But
where do you stand on breakfast food? That was the big one of your season.
Yeah. Well, I was enjoying lots of amazing breakfast while that challenge was happening.
That's a very good point. You had a way better breakfast.
Yeah, doing just fine. But so that's actually a good point, Alexa, because my season, when the breakfast challenge happened, it was a strategic move on Lauren/Tommy's part to make this happen. And I felt like the decision to eat wasn't just about eating. It was about showing like loyalty to some alliance or some agreement that was going on out there. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if I think I'm more okay with that because it was a nod. It was part of the story. It was part of the strategic game. It wasn't just I'm weak and I need to eat. It was like I'm going to sit out to show my alliance that I'm good and have this bonus breakfast meal at the same time.
Yeah. I understand that. This one, there was no strategy involved. No. And especially since they all wanted to vote out Tony, and Tony was still standing up there. And I understand maybe from the female perspective, it was, well, it's Denise, Michele, or Kim. And that means Sarah doesn't have it, which is what you wanted.
Right.
But as long as Tony can win a challenge, that's who you were gunning for. And then once Tony's gone, what can you do? You didn't really have a backup plan there. You might say Sarah, but then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, well, we can get rid of who were they going? Who were they originally saying? They were saying Jeremy after that. Was that their backup plan or Ben? Yeah. I forget even what
Jeremy.
Tony, then Jeremy. Yeah.
Poor Jeremy. His name's been around for a month. Yeah. Poor guy.
Oh God, I'm actually loving watching Jeremy in this spot though, because his exasperation face is the best ever. Just like a, what did I do?
You did nothing wrong.
Yeah, I love that character. But Jeremy he's in a funny spot because his whole strategy, his whole game is, use the meat shield, right? Protect himself with meat shields. And now for the longest time, he is the meat shield. Mm-hmm. So the tides have turned for Jeremy.
Which is pretty unbelievable too. If you're Tony, you've been able to make Jeremy the meat shield. That's so unbelievable that he's been able to pull that off because Tony is such a bigger threat. And I think Jeremy has done nothing but impress me all season long. Yeah. But it's still crazy. Coming into this season, Tony's still a bigger threat than Jeremy. Jeremy was who people thought were going to win, mm-hmm. but mainly because he was a good middle tier threat. Mm-hmm. He could use those big threats to get himself further in the game. And now we're seeing Tony be like, no, he's a bigger threat than me. You guys should be more worried about him as he wins 3 straight immunities, finds a hidden immunity idol. It's close with a lot of people after the game. Everybody thinks Tony's telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jeremy is the threat because of the story. Everyone's so afraid to sit next to Jeremy, just deathly afraid. He has the kids, he has the firefighter, he has the Gab, he's loved by everybody, right? You can see it, it seeds in Ben's eyes that he just cannot imagine himself letting himself sit next to Jeremy. He'll feel so dumb, which he's not wrong. He's not wrong. Jeremy wins if he gets to the end, for sure.
Absolutely.
So that's what Tony's been able to do so adeptly, is understand that so many people are motivated by who they don't want to sit next to at the end. Whereas I would assume that Tony feels like he could sit next to anybody. And that, to me, is the two categories of players at this point in the game. Who's motivated by who they want to get voted out so that they don't need to sit next to them, and who needs to protect themselves from the people who are motivated by who not to sit next to at the end. And Tony's in that category.
Yeah. And we saw Nick lay it out perfectly. He said, like, Nick, Michele, and Denise said, if we all sit next to each other, we're all kind of on a level playing field.
Yes.
Which means you need to vote out Tony, Sarah, Jeremy, and Ben in the next 4. Now, I think that Nick, Denise, Michele, Ben, I think that those 4 are more even. If they were to get there, I think people could beat Ben, or Ben could beat them, depending on how it goes, because Ben's annoyed a lot of people. But all 4 of them need to get rid of Tony, Sarah, and Jeremy before the final 3, because if one of those 3 sneak in, it doesn't matter who they're sitting next to, they're going to win in a landslide.
Yeah, and they know it, all right? And that's why this was such a disappointing turn of events, that Tony gets immunity and all of that rigmarole happened, because they just ate it, right? They just fell on their face and they couldn't get it done. And I think they feel it right now, very much slipping out of their hands.
Yeah, and with Tony having that idol that now everybody knows about, there's really only 2 more safe votes, assuming he plays it this week. And if he doesn't, then he has a pretty clear path to that final 4.
He really does. He really does. There's one vulnerable one, though, right? Like, if he doesn't win immunity, he definitely plays his idol, you think, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
He has to, right? He has to know that people were gunning for him, and he knows that he's the number 1 threat of these. I forgot what was the term. He used some kind of term to describe these people who
the hyenas.
The hyenas. There you go. Right. There you go. Thank you. Yeah. So that he knows that that's the case. So he plays the idol. So what? He's safe at 7. Then 6 happens. What does he do at 6? You know. So his path to final 3 is not completely clear. Like, I think he has some hurdles at that point.
And as much as I've complained about Edge of Extinction this entire season, it actually is going to make this more interesting at the end here, because somebody like Tony, who's played as dominant, and right now, like, I will sit here and I will say, I think Tony deserves to win this game the most. Like, if Tony doesn't win, he played a great game and just got before he get to the end. But he's playing the best game out there, I think, hands down. I don't think there's really any question about it. But because of Edge of Extinction, we get to final 7. He can survive with an idol. Then we're at final 6, and let's say he doesn't win immunity. He says, okay, how can I navigate this one? But then you're to final 5. You're back to final 6 again. So he still has to survive 7, 6, 6, and 5. He's got to survive 4 more tribal councils before he can sit down at a fire-making challenge.
Yep.
That's hard to do. I mean, it seems like he's got an easy path, but he's only got 1 immunity idol. And that means he's still got to win some immunities, and who knows if there's going to be other advantages that come into play. But, like, if I'm out there right now, I don't care if I'm Sarah, I don't care if I'm Michele, I don't care if I'm Denise or Ben. I got to write down Tony's name anytime I get a chance to write down Tony's name. And if he plays an idol, hopefully he doesn't vote me out.
Yeah.
I legitimately forgot that there was an additional tribal council when I was filling that out. After all that we've just talked about Edge of Extinction, completely forgot that there was an extra one.
Yeah, that's what throws the wrench. And then who that person is coming back in, and what their relationships are like, and how they're feeling about having gotten voted out. Like, what if it's Tyson again? Like, how?
Oh my gosh!
If Tyson comes back twice in one season, who does he trust? Who does he go with? How does he play that? I would love to see that. That would be I would love for Natalie to come back, because I would feel great. I would love to see Tyson come back, because I think that would be incredible to watch. Just see him try to navigate this again.
Absolutely. And imagine too, we still have 2 people who are going to get voted out who could still come back. Jeremy and Sarah could be the next 2 boots, and then Jeremy or Sarah could come back in at final 5 to make it a final 6 and be like, screw all of you. You all voted me out, and now I'm going to figure out how to beat you and knock you out of the game. I mean, it's really, there's so many layers to this. And again, Jamal, it goes back to what you said at the beginning. I think it's the best thing that you could describe Edge of Extinction. It's like, because we care about all of them, there's so much interest in who it's going to be and what they're going to do and how they're going to play it. Whereas the first time around, it's like Chris goes on to win, and yeah, it's a cool moment. And like when you're at the finale, people are going nuts, and everybody's like, "How is this happening?" But then all of a sudden, you think back on it, you're like, "Who was that?" Like we had episodes without the winner of Survivor in it. That's weird.
Lots of them. Lots of
them. Last thing before we get into the power rankings, I want to ask you. So we got Tony has an idol.
Tony
has an idol.
Correct.
Jeremy's got a 50-50 coin. Michele and Jeremy are kind of splitting it.
Yeah.
We'll see who actually ends up using it. Do you think that we're going to get another advantage from Edge in like the first half of this episode?
No. Okay. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense to me. I think what it sounds like they're doing, because there's enough tokens out there, right? 6 people,
Sure.
6 people just got 2 tokens each because of this coconut thing, right? Tony just sold his or bought his thing for 6, right? Between Parvati and whoever else it was, right? So there's a lot of tokens out there. So I think, like I said, I think we need to resolve that part of the story. I think that part of the story needs to we need to tie a little bow on that. Like, okay, we were fighting all season long for these fire tokens. Here's how that plays out. This person buys an idol. This person buys an advantage in the challenge. This person buys food, wine, whatever it is. But this is gonna resolve, and then we'll have the who gets back in. I can't imagine. It wouldn't make any sense for there to be to throw in another challenge, another advantage. The only way I think an advantage gets back into the game is with the person who comes back from Edge of Extinction. That would make the most sense.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I do, because I think we've seen enough of them. Like the extortion thing, I wasn't a fan of, but the way it played out was so epic that how could you not be a fan of it at watching it play? I thought
that was I would like to see that again.
I'd like to see it again, just not coming from Edge, but like we have so many. Right now we have 3 people who could possibly be immune at the next tribal. Somebody's going to win immunity. We could have 4 people with only 3 people who go home. Like you don't want to get too many things, because we don't, like, as much as Jeff thought it was great and such a poetic way for her to go out, we don't want a Cirie Fields moment. We just don't want that. Like nobody wants that this season.
We also don't want a Janet Carbon moment.
Agreed.
Like, none of this not nullifier at 5 crap. Like we need to stop all that. Just let the game play out the way it plays out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Why'd you have to break our hearts, Jamal? We were having such a good time. You have to bring up Janet and make us all cry.
Well, it stings a little bit. We were robbed of that.
I agree. And so here we go. We're going into our final 7. We got our power rankings here. We're going to start at 1, go to 7. Essentially, we're saying who's
the rules here.
Yeah, so 1 to 7, number 1, you're just saying is your safest. 6 and 7 this week is who you actually think is going to go home this week. It doesn't really matter the order this week, because we're just going to do, if they go home this week, they go home this week. So if you have them at 6 and 7, for anybody who's playing our power rankings game, you'd get 13 points if you have both people correct. Doesn't matter if you have Michele at 7 and Sarah at 6, and Michele gets 6 and Sarah gets 7, you'd still get 13 points, right? But we're essentially saying, who do we think is going to still be in the game and not on Edge of Extinction going into the finale episode? So Jamal, we'll start with you. Who's your lock to make the finale? Who's your number 1?
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here. This is a really risky call, but I think Tony is safe here.
I think he's good for a while. I have him right there too.
Because, I think there's no way he doesn't play his idol next. And I think he has enough strategic relationships, not just like, I like you, like strategic relationship. It's in Jeremy's best interest to keep Tony. It's in Sarah's best interest to keep Tony. I don't know. I'm not so sure about where Ben is feeling right now. I'm not sure where Nick is right now, but I just don't think Tony is up for being voted out this coming week.
Alexa?
I am in the exact same boat, and I didn't think I would say this 3 weeks ago, but he has this idol, and he also could win yet another immunity challenge. Kim was someone who was a big immunity threat, and with her gone, I think Jeremy's someone to be nervous about, and Denise. And I think Sarah's obviously good in challenges, but we've seen Jeremy and Denise do pretty well in these kind of endurance individual immunity challenges. Who's to say Tony's not going to get 4 in a row? That's not unreasonable at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think between those two factors, and like what you just said, Jamal, it's not like Sarah was so mad at him last week, but I think she came to realize really quickly that they really need each other.
He doesn't have any other options. That's what made the move so ingenious on Tony's part. Like, he knew he could do that to her.
Exactly. And she can get mad, but she's going to come back to him, and he's still going to need her.
Right.
So I think Tony's completely safe. I think him saying that he had an idol to everybody was actually a really good move, because it's kind of saying, like, hey, try me and see how it goes.
Right.
So
that's always going to happen, by the way. Like, that's how Tony plays idols. Like, he bullies his way into the next week and the next week by just saying, hey, I got an idol. So you can waste your votes if you want to, but I have an idol. Like, that was always going to be the way he played that.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to be boring, but I also have Tony at number 1. There is no way on Survivor Winners at War, with what we've seen on this season, that Tony is not in our finale still in this game. Like, he could get voted out at 5, he get voted out at 6 when somebody comes back in, but Tony is not going to Edge of Extinction. Tony is going to either win this game, or he's going to go out in like the David Wright type spot, or something like that. He's going to be that 4th, 5th, 6th maybe, but I do not see him going at all this way. It would be a crime if we go into finale night with the bitter taste in our mouths that Tony is not actually there. So
yeah,
I got him. I think he's set. And you know what? If there's going to be another idol found of any sort, Tony's going to find it. So even though I think he's totally safe at 7, because he's either going to play an idol or he's going to win immunity or something, at 6, even if he has to play his idol at 7 and he doesn't win immunity at 6, still don't count him out.
Yeah,
that's just, I just feel like he could find something, some desperate last measure thing.
Yeah.
So I got Tony at 1. I think we're all on the right track. Well done, everybody.
Say it on 3, everybody.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, why I think he'd be safe at 6 also is because I don't think enough, like I said, enough people will think they need Tony. They continue to need Tony to get to 5, right? So if you vote out Tony, you leave yourself vulnerable to the Denise, Michelle, Nick type cohort. So yeah, Tony sticks around.
Are we going to match on our number 2, everybody?
Yeah, and
go ahead, Phil. You got it.
Yeah, you're shaking your head, Phil.
Come on,
or
Phil.
Maybe you're on a delay. Maybe that was it.
I'm on a little bit of a delay. That's what my favorite part is. And I know I'm on the delay, but you guys can't tell. Like, I'm watching Alexa laugh and then I hear her laugh 5 minutes later. So I know I'm on a bit of a delay here, but I got the queen at 2. I don't see any reason to vote her out. Michelle's staying in. Michelle, there's no reason to vote her out of the game right now. And she's got the 50-50 coin. She gave it to Jeremy. I don't know how that's going to play out now coming into this episode. I don't know if Michelle's going to be like, give it back. That was for this, or you can keep it if you think you're in more danger, but then they, maybe Michelle feels like she's in danger. I don't know, because at the same time, Jeremy told Tony, hey, Michelle gave me this and it's a coin.
Yeah.
And so Tony could say, okay, let's try to convince Michelle she's going home, so she'll ask for it back, and then we can blindside Jeremy. Like, Tony is a psycho. He could figure something out that makes it work. So but I don't see any reason to get rid of Michelle here. And to the chagrin of everybody, my dream comes true, and Michelle makes it through every single episode of Survivor Winners at War in the game. So Michelle, moving on. Can anybody give like a good reason to vote her out at 7 or 6 right now? And I really can't think of one, but maybe there is one that I'm just not seeing.
Does Tony know that, I'm wording this poorly, did Jeremy tell anybody what Michelle gave him?
Well, yeah. Tony.
Okay. So if Tony figured this out, the week prior, Tony had asked Michelle for money, and she said, I can't because I bought this thing that helps me if I get voted out. Tony could put 2 and 2 together, realize she was lying to him. Maybe it doesn't matter because she gave it to Jeremy. That is the only thing I can think of, but I don't know if that would be enough to get rid of her.
The one thing that I think makes Michelle vulnerable is her relationship to Jeremy. as is all danger of anybody associated.
He's like patient zero
tonight, right? Yeah. So Tony made this call against Sophie, or made this call about Sophie, right? Like to split up somebody that he wants to be closer to. I think Tony has made this decision that Jeremy is going to sit with him in the final. I think Tony has no interest in getting Jeremy voted out, and I think Tony might feel threatened by Michelle's place in Jeremy's.
Yeah.
So that might be something like, I could see Tony getting Sarah and Nick, and maybe Ben to turn on Michelle for that reason. But I don't know. It depends on who wins immunity, right? If Jeremy wins immunity, then Michelle's definitely vulnerable.
I do like what you said there too. Like I could see Tony saying, I know, like you brought this up earlier. Tony feels like he can beat anybody he sits next to. He sits down at the end. And I could see him saying, I want to sit next to Jeremy and Sarah and win that way. And say, yeah, I just beat Jeremy and Sarah in the final three. So,
and he'd have a good chance to. I think Jeremy and Sarah have some cases to make, but he definitely feels very capable.
I think ultimately he'd end up getting a couple more votes. It'd be a much closer final three than anybody would be comfortable with. But I think that he would get enough votes to win that in that situation. But maybe he does say, you know what? I want to get rid of these hyenas. I want to get rid of these hyenas. Let's get rid of Michelle and let's get rid of Nick this week. And we go into a final five of Ben, Denise, Sarah, Tony, and Jeremy. And we're like, what is going on here? But my gut, just like watching Survivor.
Yeah.
The people who play, I mean, Michelle has been on the wrong side of so many votes this season. She's had a rough go of it. It feels like every time she plans something, it goes wrong. She votes for Jeremy last week. No, nobody else votes for Jeremy. Jeremy doesn't even have to play the 50-50 coin that she bought. Like, doesn't feel like anything Michelle's doing is going right. And so for me, it's like, man, like, even if you're as confident as Tony is in his game, it doesn't hurt to sit next to Michelle, like in this final. It doesn't hurt at all. And she's been kind of working with Tony here and there. Like every now and then she does end up working with Tony, even with the Jeremy vote. Like she's planning on Tony voting for Jeremy. So I just don't see why you would get rid of her right now. Unless she tries to be like, well, I can't win this game. I need to make a crazy move and starts like overplaying her hand and then ends up getting voted out because she's actually a threat to blow up somebody else's game. But I just don't see why you get rid of her this week.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to be careful to take into consideration 2 cycles here, right? Like what you just said, I completely with you for this first vote, but depending on who goes home next, that could shuffle the whole thing, and maybe Michelle does come to target the second vote. So
true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True. Who's your number 2, Jamal?
I know.
Well, hey, you know what? I didn't expect anybody else to have Michelle there, so that's fine. Jamal, who's your 2?
Number 2. So number 2 safest, right? Who I
Yep.
feel like is not going home is Sarah.
Same here.
Yep. I think Sarah just nestled her way right where she needs to be, to the point where she could say, no, Tony, don't play an idol for me. I'm good. And she's right. Like, come on. You know what I mean? And, not to bring in social media too much, but are we all aware of Sarah's tweet here where she was like, I played an amazing episode and all anybody can talk about is Tony and Jeremy. Like she did a badass thing. And
that was a baller move saying don't play that for me.
About how amazing Sarah is doing right now. So I think she is safe. I think she is right there. I think Tony would never turn on her at this point. I think Jeremy and Michelle would calculate that Sarah going home is not the right move. I think they're more afraid of the Nicks and the Bens of the world. I think she's just right in the middle to duck the crossfire. Sarah's amazing.
Alexa, you also had her at 2.
Yeah, I think Sarah's completely safe. I think when Tony was just kind of giving her everything she needed to hear last week, and he said, I am still with you, I completely believe that, because I think, kind of like what we said earlier, they really need each other. And I think she's the one who's closest to him. So if anybody has the best option to blindside him, I think it's her, because she could probably convince him that he's safe, even if he's not. But I don't think it would be in her best interest either. The two of them, it feels very equal. It's not being shown particularly equally. But I think for whatever reason, others aren't looking at Sarah because they can always say, oh my gosh, I have to get rid of Tony. Tony's won all these immunities. Tony's being Tony. Sarah is playing a crazy, crazy good social game. Everyone loves her. And at this point, even when there's so few people left, Kim gave her a fire token. I never would have guessed that, but she did. People are giving Sarah their tokens, and it's things for reasons that we're not seeing, but I think a large number of people still in the game and on the jury are huge Sarah fans. So I think she's okay.
And that is the key. It's things we're not seeing. And this has always ailed Sarah as a Survivor character. I don't think we see the extent of how incredible Sarah's game actually is. I rewatched the episode, and there was a good 15 minutes where every scene was Tony talking to somebody else. It was Tony talking to Ben, Tony talking to Sarah, Tony talking to Jeremy, right? And it just he was the focal point of this arc in the story. And my senses perk up when I see that, because I'm like, look, everybody's talking to everybody. I know that that's the case. So Sarah has something going on. Sarah's working it in some way someone in the chat said something about Sarah cutting Tony last minute would give her a chance to win. And I think that might be the case. I think Sarah is sleeper cell right now, and knows that she might have to cut Tony right at the end. That might be Tony's downfall. So that would be exciting.
And I just finished watching Survivor Marquesas, and I think that season, we see so much of Sean and Boston Rob fighting with John Carroll. But Vesepia is also with Sean and Boston Rob, and she wins the game, but we see nothing of what she's doing. We see nothing because it's not as exciting. And at the end of the day, what's more fun to watch in reality? Tony running up to people and just blatantly lying or being blatantly lied to and discovering it, and Nick and him having that conversation where he catches Nick so off guard and Nick gets caught in the worst lie arguably ever. I mean, there was just no defense there. Yeah, I mean,
that was tough to watch.
I felt like I was playing an early 2000s RPG game where the character you keep pushing the button to talk, and the character's face doesn't move and it won't say what you want it to say. I felt like that's what I was watching there. And so for Sarah, I feel like she talks about we got that whole scene where she's got the runway going, and she's talking about how her game is her social game and all of that. Because she's so good socially, she's not that exciting to watch play her social game, because she's not creating these insane confrontations like Tony is. That's why we saw a lot of Sarah and Tony screaming at each other, because that's exciting TV. That's what's going to get people oh, drama. This is what we want. Normally, I feel like when Sarah's going and talking to somebody, it's oh yeah, we're good. This is a great conversation. Can't wait to go over there and just sit down and hang out now. We're so good.
You know who else I'd put in that category is Michele. I think Michelle's game, right? If you ever had to list out her skill set, like she was a video game character, her skill set is, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly what we should do. I'm with you 100%. I don't know what's going on, but I'm with you. And she will have that same conversation with every single person out there, such that she flies under the radar. I think it's ingenious, and I'm learning a lot, to be honest, from watching them.
And you did a really good impression of her. You see that in the preview for this coming episode. I forget I think it's probably Jeremy who suggests, can we get rid of Ben? And she's like, oh my God, yes.
Yeah, please.
It's so emphatic, and it feels like two friends who are just gossiping. And she does that so well. And I think the difference between her and a lot of other people is it's genuine. I don't think she has to try to do that.
And the other one who does that so perfectly, because I actually find, because I've been watching pretty much every episode twice. I watch it, so then we podcast, and then I watch it again. And
what have you guys studied? I only watched it once.
Denise is another one who's doing the exact same thing. And it's so funny because as a viewer, when Denise and Michele say, yeah, have to, got to do it, 100% have to, I'm sitting here and I'm like, how are they not seeing right through this? How are they not seeing that they are just getting lip service right now? And it's just, yep. And it's because we're seeing the exact same reaction from them no matter who they're talking to. But what's so amazing about their game is they're great in these one-on-one situations. Like Jeremy, yeah, I got your back. Denise and Kim having their conversation, and then Denise and Jeremy having their conversation. And they have these great one-on-one conversations so that nobody else realizes that they're having the exact same conversation with everybody, because at the end of the day, somebody will walk over, like Kim and Jeremy will walk off together after having a conversation with Michele and having a conversation with Denise, and they won't even question if Michele and Denise are loyal or not.
Yeah.
That's an unbelievable skill to have in an all-winner season.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And I think Sarah really has it too. I really do.
And if they can figure out how to highlight that better, I would enjoy that a lot.
Yeah.
I would love to see like a montage of that particular skill set really being highlighted for us, because it's the unsung, like, subtle skill that makes a great Survivor player.
Yeah, and I know it was. I love Nick. It was really funny to watch him entering conversations montage. The Aubrey, what she said, can we have a dialogue montage? Those ones are obviously funny because they're making fun of people, which I know that's not always the right thing. But I would love to see a compilation of Michele just being like, oh my God, yes. Or Denise saying, of course I want to get rid of Adam, even though she was just best friends with them. Right. I think, and again, this kind of goes back to, I think for Michele and Denise, it's fairly natural. So they're not saying to like the camera, like, oh yeah, I'm totally playing everyone like this. But that's a montage I would totally watch, because I think people don't really appreciate it, but it's definitely how they've gotten this far.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think you're right. I mean, we see it all the time. I mean, right now everybody talks about Tony and Jeremy. I mean, Sarah's 100% right with that tweet. Everybody's talking about Tony and Jeremy, Tony and Jeremy, Tony and Jeremy. Nobody's really talking about Denise, Sarah, and Michele. And especially like Denise right now has kind of been like on the wrong side of everything. And yet, like, how many votes has Denise gotten? Like, only at the one tribal, I think.
She got this one, didn't she? I was trying to figure out who were the Jeremy and Kim votes. It was Ben, Kim.
It was Ben, Kim, and
voted Jeremy.
Oh, Denise, I think. Oh, Michele voted for Jeremy. I assume Denise did because
of that.
She kind of shushed him. And not kind of, she shushed him.
But Ben looked surprised by the vote.
Ben looked surprised. Wait, hang on, I'm looking it up.
Yeah, I think Ben didn't want, because Tony then leans over and he's like,
Denise voted Jeremy.
Denise did vote Jeremy?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, that changes my feeling.
Yeah, but I do. I'm just kind of going back to that point.
Face it, you might as well vote for them at that point.
So how? Oh, that's. So how did Ben? Okay. Anyways, that changes my thoughts about things. Go ahead.
But I was just gonna say, like, what's the one moment we've had highlighted of Denise's game pretty much in the history of her Survivor run? It's the Sandra boot, because it's flashy, it's showy, it's in your face, it's I did that, I played all that. That's what Survivor has really become. Like, it's who can be the flashiest, who can have that flashy move. That's when you're gonna be, the focal point of an episode or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we're not seeing as much of Sarah and Denise and Michele. And I know Michelle's been on the wrong side of a lot of votes, so there's other reasons why we're not seeing a lot of Michele. But, like, especially Sarah, I feel like we should be getting so much more content from Sarah than we're getting. But she hasn't made that flashy move because she's letting Tony run around like a psycho. And I think what's going to end up happening, this is my prediction going into just Final 7, I think Tony and Sarah are ultimately going to end up making fire against each other. Because I think last week was a very telling moment when Sarah said, if I get voted out, I am never talking to you again, and you don't talk to me. And Sarah means these things. Like, we saw after Cagayan how hurt she was, because she really believed, like, Tony, I'm with you. What is wrong with you? Like, we are in this. And Tony blindsided her, and she took that very personally. Yeah. And I think that Tony takes that very seriously too. And I think he values his relationship with Sarah. So I could see the two of them in the Final 4. And one of these other people, we see it every season. Kim Johnson does it, so Ethan and Lex can't go to the Final 2 together. You see somebody win this immunity. Nora did it in your season. And they take somebody while two other people have to battle it out. And I think Tony and Sarah are going to end up having to battle it out. And really, I mean, that kind of feels like the way it should be on this season at this point.
That feels right.
So that's my prediction.
I
have Sarah at 3.
I'd enjoy that finale.
Yeah. But I have Sarah at 3, so I'm pretty much right in line with what you all were thinking. I love her spot, and I would be floored if she ended up getting voted out here in one of these two boots. Well, who's your 3?
My 3? My 3. My list gets a little murky at this point because I wasn't fully understanding the double boot scenario. But I'm gonna stick to it and I'm gonna defend it. Ben.
Wow.
Ben is 3.
Let's hear it.
Ben is 3. One, because he has an idol. I think that's an easy one. Like, I think as soon as Ben feels like he's in trouble, he plays his idol. I think that's next episode. I think Ben does not feel good about having voted for Kim. I think Ben knows that Tony is untrustworthy at this point. I think Ben feels on the hot seat. So he plays his idol. But I'm wondering, I'm thinking that, again, Ben becomes a pawn. Ben becomes a piece to use in someone's game, right? To get out the underlings, right? So Tony includes Ben in this, like, you know, the soldier, the cop, the firefighter, like, we could all do it all together, and kind of includes him in that, and might want to use Ben to take out like a Denise, Nick, Michele type character, or the person who comes back from Edge, because the person who comes back from Edge is not going to be Ben's friend. Like, Ben is going to be the one that will not talk to that person, will want to have nothing to do with that person. And so I think he's going to become a pawn in the move to either take out the hyenas or to take out the person who comes back from Edge.
Yeah, I could see that. I worry for Ben that he's almost, and I said he was too nice of a guy on the last podcast. I feel like it's too easy right now for somebody like Tony to kind of lie straight to his face by using this whole soldier, cop, firefighter. And even though Ben has an idol, and we've seen him successfully play idols over and over and over again, when he was successfully playing his idols, anybody would have played those idols. I mean, it was just the most common sense. You have to play those idols or you're going home. It's very obvious. I worry that in this episode, they're going to be able to be like, Ben, you're good, we're going. And, you know, maybe they get rid of Jeremy and it's like, okay, good. Next, we're just going to get rid of Michele. We're going to get rid of Denise. We're going to get rid of Nick. It's fine. Something's going to be fine. And they can all kind of side, and Tony can say to people, Ben has an idol. Nobody say a word. Nobody say a word. Nobody say a word. And Ben thinks he's so close. Because, I mean, look, Jeremy has been lied to so many times by Tony. We know that as an audience. And even though the truth, Jeremy has been told the truth he thinks so far, we're seeing Tony's ulterior motives to how he plans to eventually get Jeremy out. I think I froze, but that's okay. I did freeze. But we're seeing kind of those ulterior motives. So I think that Ben is going to be lied to at some point sooner than later, and I think it could happen this episode.
You think he gets sent home with an idol in his pocket?
I could see it happening, yeah.
Okay. Alexa,
that would be one way to complete Ben's arc, because his first season, he's playing every idol as soon as he gets it. And then if he were to go home this week with an idol in his pocket, I am not just saying this because I'm in the middle. I agree with both of you, but I think because it's a 2-hour episode, that's what's really throwing me off. I have been a little bit more in the middle of my rankings because I think I think it really depends on how much clout Jeremy has, because Tony is really tight with Jeremy and he's really tight with Ben. I think Jeremy is still target number 1, but I think Tony will still want to work with him. In which case, Jeremy's going to say, can we get rid of Ben? He won't even make eye contact to me. Ben's been making people mad. Let's just get him out of here. Ben could sniff that out and play his idol and then goes home the weekend, the very next day. So I don't know. I think they could pull the wool over his eyes, because I know he and Sarah have been really close for a while. He and Tony have been close for a while. I think, and you know, it's an easy sell to say, hey, we're just going to get rid of Jeremy. Ben's been wanting that for a while. I think they could do that, but I think Ben does have a really good ability to tell when people don't want to work with him. So I think he could play it for himself, but I think he could just go home the very next week or very next hour.
Yes. Ben's in a tricky spot. I mean, it's one of those, like, at the beginning of the season, I was putting Ben at the bottom of my power rankings when there were 18 people left in the game. And now Ben's at final 7. And like, I still feel like not great about his chances, but at the same time, it seems like every week, like I kind of agree, like he becomes a pawn in this. And then, but like, when does Tony eventually want to get him out? And like, how close is Tony with Jeremy? Does Tony say, you know what, Jeremy, you're right, let's get rid of Ben first. I like you more than Ben. Like, could it really come down to those types of like old school mentality in this crazy new school season with twists and turns like out of control, that Tony just says, you know what, I like Jeremy and I like Sarah more. Let's get rid of Ben, and then I can get rid of Jeremy after that, almost as like a favor to Jeremy, as like a, hey man, give me your vote at the end because I got rid of Ben before you.
Sure. The only problem I see with that is you have to do that with other people, right? Like Tony can just unilaterally decide that unless it's like, your idols and then decides who goes. I think Tony, of all people, is the most afraid of giving up the numbers to these level players and get out the person who comes back from the edge. And Ben is going to be a big piece of that plan for them. Yeah.
So Alexa, who do you have at 3?
I actually have Nick Wilson at number 3. I know we haven't talked about him too much. I originally had him a little bit lower, but I think this is like it's kind of like Tony is the octopus, and everyone's connected to Tony. I don't really know how else everyone else is connected, but I think we're seeing Tony being really close to Ben and Jeremy, but Tony has next to. I could see Nick kind of wanting to wrestle a little control away from Tony, which could immediately turn Tony off. But I think Nick is very aware of how he's perceived. And so I think he knows than you guys. So what do you think?
You don't have him much higher than me. So I want to hear Jamal's take first up in the air on my 4 through 7. Also, this whole buffering thing, guys, we can't do anything about that. But go ahead.
How does this work, though? Because we're now getting into the area where we're saying each other's names that we have in different places. So I have a big case to make about where I have Nick. But where we have the player, or should we discuss where the places that we have the players?
I think we should, for this situation, we should discuss on the place, because this sounds like a very concerted choice for why you put him there. So I want to hear that when we deserve to.
Place. Okay, great. All right, so we've all said our piece about number 3.
Okay. Well, you know what? Then I'll say my 4 now, and I won't get any help from Jamal, right? But I also think that he's got to give a little bit to Sarah this episode. I think Sarah wants Jeremy out. When he gets rid of Sophie, which is Sarah's close after the finale of season 38, he said Nick Wilson's going to get top 6 on Survivor Winners at War. History of Survivor, because everything that Nick has done has just been like he's going to be like a 6th place first person. Considering Denise a hyena right now. And though I don't necessarily believe she is one, I believe that Denise is a great Survivor player. And I think all of these players are obviously great, but like, Tony would say like, okay, we get rid of Denise and then we get rid of a Ben or a Jeremy or a bigger threat like that. So that's why I got Nick being okay here.
Okay.
I'm so excited to hear this disagreement.
I disagree thoroughly. But I'm gonna hold my Nick talk until we get to his place. Middling place. He could not. Like, I don't think he's actually going to, but I don't think he's like completely safe. I think it's precarious, and it's precarious for all the reasons that we know him to have been in a precarious spot all season long. People are coming for him. He knows it. They know it. They just are looking for this opportunity to take the shot, and he just right people looking out for him. First it was Michele. I feel like Tony and corner in the next 2 episodes and offer up Jeremy as a concession to maybe a Nick or a Ben for some reason. I don't know exactly, what would transpire for that to happen, but I do think that Jeremy is in that middle spot where it's more about circumstances to me than it is about his actually being in a dangerous spot. Like, I think he's going to be safe, but if the chips fall against him, he could definitely be offered up as sacrifice to move forward. Because you start to hear the players talking that way now. I think it was someone said something like, I have to prove my loyalty to Ben now, and so I'm going to vote this way, or whatever it is. So they're starting to like think about their votes as a gift to each other to solidify trust, or to signify that they're in the alliance or moving forward together. So Jeremy might fall into that.
Yeah. Do you think Michele is going to have Jeremy keep the 50-50 coin? That's really kind of my biggest question. Because if Jeremy gets to keep the 50-50 coin, then obviously he's a little bit safer than I'm feeling right now. Although not 100% safer, because it's still just But do we think that Michelle's going to let him keep that, or do you think that she's going to kind of ask for that back?
Oh man, that's a hard one. If Michelle was willing to give it up now, I don't know why she feels like she would need to take it back next. You know, like she wants to save Jeremy, and I think she considers Jeremy to be in more trouble than she is, and I don't see why that changes going forward. Maybe she feels some kind of way about having been left out of the Kim plan, maybe, but I think they patch that up real quick, and maybe Michelle continues to want to save Jeremy for the same reasons.
She doesn't strike me as someone to hold a grudge. And how shocking would it be to see a Michelle versus Jeremy fight the way that we just saw a Sarah versus Tony fight? That's just not something that I would love to see that. I just do not think it's in either of their DNA to really do that. And I think that's why they work really well together. But I think the thing is, it's a 50-50 coin. It's not exactly an idol. It's not a dip out of tribal council. It's so 50-50 that they can just share it, I think. And I think if Michelle's in trouble at tribal council, she can probably look to Jeremy and say, do you mind hooking me up? And he tries to play it for her.
That's a good question. Do you think Jeremy looks out for Michelle the way that Michelle's looking out for Jeremy? I don't know.
I don't think so.
To be honest, I don't know that Jeremy's loyalty to Michelle has ever been tested up to this point. I just wonder if Jeremy would try to just make the cutthroat decision and cut bait at this point in the game.
I think you're right. I don't think he's as married to this alliance as she is.
Yeah.
And I think, Jamal, this kind of goes back to your point from earlier about how we've seen so much of this through Tony talking to everybody. We have a hard time kind of seeing who Jeremy feels close with other than Tony. Mm-hmm. We're having a hard time really keeping track of that because so much of this has been based around Tony having conversations and Tony saying, I want to get rid of Jay, but I got to keep Jay and this and that. But it does feel like to me every time we do cut away from Jeremy talking to Tony, it's Jeremy talking to Michelle. Yeah. He was doing it with Denise and Kim, but then they started to kind of turn on him and he could feel it. Right. And I feel like he's felt close to Michelle pretty much the entire time. So even if it's not as close as Michelle feels to him, if I'm Jeremy and I feel like Michelle's going to get the votes, I feel like I can beat Michelle at the end. And I might say, you know what? Here's 50-50 coin. Try it. And you know what? If it doesn't work, give me your vote at Final Tribal Council anyway, because I gave it back to you. You know, so I could see it going either way for him, really.
That's a good point. That brings in the dynamics of jury management at this point in the game, which I don't think we talk about enough. I think there's a lot of jury management that happens at this point in the game. And that might be one of them. Yeah.
And because think about it, I mean, Wendell, when he gave that idol to Laurel, even though it didn't mean anything, even though it didn't do anything, it ultimately ends up being the reason he wins the game. And it seems like such an unimportant move as a viewer, because we're like, Laurel isn't going anywhere. This doesn't really matter. Wendell's fine. Laurel's fine. But it was just that like show of, yes, I would have your back if need be. Yep. Could kind of end up being how Jeremy tries to play this with Michelle.
So someone in the chat, C. Marie Parrish, made a really good point. This is the last week, so I'm going to assume the first half of this episode, that the 50-50 coin can be played. So I think it's getting played, whether it's for himself or whether it's for Michelle or for anybody else. I think going back to jury management, I think if Jeremy's going to play it for anyone other than himself, it probably has to be Michelle. But that's food for thought, that it is likely going to get played in the first hour.
I can't wait.
The public knowledge of these things is what I can't predict, or I can't, but we're all making shot in the darks here. But this is the one that throws me the most: is does the knowledge that Jeremy has a 50-50 coin affect people's ability to come at him? And I'm wondering if he pulls this like, hey, take your shot if you want to, but I could be completely safe if I do this thing. And does he try to use that to move the vote off of him? I don't know. I don't know how that plays out. I'm excited to see.
I feel like we've said this ad nauseum. I think it all depends on Tony, because Tony is the one who knows that what exactly it is. Yeah. You're just watching Tribal Council. I'm thinking that's an idol. He took it. I mean, I don't think he ever took it out of the.
He just kept saying he was going to play it.
Yeah. So if I'm if I'm Denise, I would assume that's an idol.
Sure.
So that would then make me nervous, but maybe Tony can say, oh no, it's not a big deal. It's only an idol, maybe. I don't know. That's a really good question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering if like, yeah, it just seems like an important thing to consider.
Right.
And I feel like they're going to have to say what it is. I just have a hard time imagining, just in terms of like the downtime, the conversation about what just took place. I don't know that you can have everybody hold that secret from everybody. I think you just got to say like, yep, this is what it was, you know?
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and assume that everybody now knows that it's a 50-50 coin that Jeremy had and Michele gave it to him.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And then it's going to be, do people actually feel comfortable enough to just throw the votes on Jeremy while that's still out there? You know, like, do you still feel safe putting 4 on him and hoping that the other 3 votes don't come in on you?
Yep.
Alexa, who's your 4?
My 4 is Michele, who we've been talking about a little bit here. I think what I've been saying every week is, why get rid of Michele? You just said that, Phil. She's not bothering anybody. I think people are way more scared about a lot of other players than they are of her. But I think it does say something that she is consistently being left out of votes. And I don't think that's a knock on her social game. I don't know if that's a knock on her personally, but I don't know if anyone is really looking to save her either. So especially if we have this 50-50 coin in play, we have 2 idols floating around. She could be the stray bullet vote. I don't necessarily think she will be, but that's why I have her kind of at just around the middle bottom half, because I just don't. I know who she'll defend. I don't really know who's going to defend her.
Oh, that's a fascinating thing to consider. Is the stray bullet idea? Mm-hmm. Like, we have all these advantages. Someone is going to get got by these things, and it's not going to necessarily be because it was anybody's first choice. You know, like, people just kind of get hit by idle plays and advantage plays, and that's an interesting thing. So maybe Michele wasn't someone's first choice to go home, but because the idol was played in some, unforeseen way, or the 50-50 coin or whatever, Michele just kind of like lands in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I could see that. That's why I have one of the people I still have left available down here at the bottom. But who's your 5, Jamal?
My 5 is Michele. My 5 is Michele, and my main reason is what I said earlier. Tony might find it in his best interest to cut Michele and Jeremy, to cut them apart, and get rid of Michele. I think that is a very plausible way that Michele goes home.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I got to preface my 5. This would have been Jeremy if this was 1 boot, but because it's 2 boots, I have Ben instead, because he has an idol. And I just feel a little bit more comfortable with Ben making it through this week with an idol than Jeremy making it through this week with a 50-50 coin. So this would have been the spot for Jeremy. If it was like 1 boot, I would have felt a lot better. But because it's a double boot, I'm sitting here and I'm going, man, like, he's had 9 lives and he's used about 8 3/4. Mm-hmm. And like, that 50-50 coin might be the 9th one. So I just feel like in a double boot episode, there's a better chance he goes. So I got Ben with his idol as my number 5. I still feel like they can pull something on him this week, but I feel like it's a lot more likely that Denise, who's also kind of had 9 lives here, and like her whole alliance is being decimated around her, could find herself gone. So I got Ben safer than Denise and Jeremy. But barely.
I have Ben at number 5 too, kind of for the same reason that I mentioned earlier, that Ben, kind of like with your reasoning with Jeremy, Phil, where if it was 1 boot, I would think Ben is totally fine. But I don't know. I know that it's, people always say like, oh, bring the one who's rubbing people the wrong way to the end. But I think, I don't know if Ben's going to get there. I think it really depends on whether Tony wants to play a crazy, crazy game or not. I could see Tony saying, okay, I'm the only one who knows Ben has an idol. I need to get rid of him so that I can just get myself a second idol. I would not be shocked if he did that.
Yeah, that is something to really think about, because he knows that once an idol is played, they probably get put back out there, even at final 6 in a Survivor season. I mean, that's just how it's become at this point. Alexa, I think you and I should go first, because Jamal has a very different bottom 2 than the 2. of us. We have the same bottom two. I froze. So I knew I froze. See, I stop. I'm ready. I wait. I look at Jamal does the smile every time. He's just like,
We both did the phase.
So we have the same bottom two, Alexa. Do we have them in the same order? We have Denise and Jeremy. Who's your 6? Who's your 7?
I am going to give Jeremy the up because he has the coin, because I think he's used up 7 of his 9 lives. I think he's still floating. So, and the thing is, at the end of the day, Jeremy has not accidentally escaped 4 votes. This is all, I mean, he's been a part of a lot of these flips. So who's to say that he can't keep doing that? Denise, I think, is in huge trouble. I think she and Jeremy were kind of buds, but I don't think after last week they're going to be. I think someone had mentioned that Denise has a large sum of money. I believe she has 6 fire tokens. I haven't been keeping track, but I know she has a lot. So she could use that in her favor. She could, I think you can buy an advantage, or you can buy a clue to an advantage. I really think that's her only hope. I don't know who is going out of their way to defend Denise. Denise has 1-2 immunities. She's, she still has that flashy Sandra move. And I know everyone says that, these huge moves that you make in the pre-merge maybe don't matter, but this is how Denise won last time. She just kept kind of puttering along. So I think between her kind of, I guess, deteriorated relationship with Jeremy and her being who she is, I think Denise is in a ton of trouble. We have the same,
Alexa. I have Jeremy at 6 and I have Denise at 7. If Denise makes it through this episode, it's going to be because her social game is just insane. Like, I really do think that. And I know she's being listed as one of the hyenas here, but if she gets through this, it's going to be because she had to take control in some way to get through this. So I would be unbelievably impressed if she gets through. She has no advantages. She has no allies. She's just there. She's really just there. I mean, even Michele, who she voted with last week to vote for Jeremy, it doesn't matter. Like Michelle's just going to be like, all right, bye, Denise. Like, that's not going to help me anymore. And like, I'm going to go now, like, pretend to be tighter with Tony and Sarah than I actually am. So I would be so impressed if Denise gets through this. If this was one boot, I'd probably be between Denise and Ben, being that it's a double boot episode here. I feel like Denise is just one of these. It has to go this week. I just feel like, and it makes sense too, like, and not to make the Godfather angry when he eventually watches this, but the edit just makes sense for Denise to be somebody who just misses out on the finale. Like, it just makes sense on this season for her to not make the finale. For Jeremy to not make the finale, that's a little bit tougher. So I feel a little bit more confident in Jeremy being one of our people in the finale, which would just make that finale absolutely epic. If you have Jeremy, Tony, and Sarah are returning from Edge, and then like whoever the other 2 are, whether it's Michele and Nick or Michele and Ben, it doesn't matter. It would just be so epic to have like that grouping. So I don't know. I got Denise at 7.
Prove us wrong, Jamal. Let's hear it.
Okay, so these are my feels about this. So we've been talking about a lot about what could happen in terms of like maybe Tony getting in between Jeremy and Michele. Maybe that's a possibility. My prediction, what I actually think is going to happen and what I think makes the most sense for them, is for that to be an alliance. I think Jeremy, Sarah, Michele, Jeremy is going. Jeremy, Tony, Sarah, Michele, Jeremy is going to be a 4-person alliance because there's 7, right? So 4 makes 7, right? 4 makes the majority of 7, and I think they will calculate that the 4 of them getting together will beat out the 3 on the bottom who have no interest in going to the finale or going to the final with any of them, right? So that's what I think actually takes place. I think that's what makes the most sense. And so therefore, I think Denise and Nick are on the bottom, and I have Nick as 7 and Denise as 6.
So now give us this Nick talk, because we both had Nick. I had him at 4. Alexa had him at 3.
Oh man! All right. So Nick, think about what we know about. So because I have that split in these 7, think about what everyone thinks about Nick, right? Tony knows that Nick lied to him, right, to his face. Tony has sussed out what Nick's true motivation is. Nick has no interest in going to the final 3 with any of those people. And Nick is is starting to get into that spot with the Denise and the Michele, like that group when Kim was still around. Like he was right there with them, and Ben and Tony got into a fight about what Nick's allegiances were, and I think Tony doesn't believe Ben. I think that is wrong, right? So this is why I think that Nick is up. Nick has nowhere else to hide here, and his game is found out essentially. And so knowing that that's my idea about the foursome that gets together. Who is the person? If it's not Ben, it has to be Nick. That the four of them kind of gang up on, because that's their biggest threat. He's the one who's going to take Kim's place in terms of trying to lead the charge against them, and I think they know that. Mm-hmm. So that's
why you make a really good point about Tony completely catching Nick lying. That's something that I watched as like a funny moment, but I didn't actually think about the fact that Nick was totally on board with that, and I think Tony, kind of like we're saying about Jeremy and Michele, Tony may have that allegiance to Nick. Nick doesn't necessarily have that back for Tony.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it would make sense. I mean, that's why like I'm pretty confident Tony's not going anywhere, Sarah's not going anywhere, Michelle's not going anywhere. I'm really confident in that. That next four, I could see any of them going home this week, and I think there's good reasons for all of it. I mean, you got to think though, like last week's episode started with Nick. Was that 2 weeks ago? Whatever it was, Nick sneaking up on Tony while Tony is looking for an idol. Nick goes off to look for it like alone. Tony and Nick clearly had some sort of bond there. But now, 2 weeks later, look how much has changed, and who knows if they actually feel closer, trust each other at all.
Right. And so Nick was feeling all big and bad because he was saying like, oh, the big dogs are shooting at each other, and now it's my time to figure out who I want to be my final three. Okay, that battle's over. Tony and company won. So now I think they got to turn their attention to what they think is the next biggest threat, and I think that's Nick.
Yeah,
just of allegiance, just in terms of like knowing, just getting that feeling or figuring out for sure that there's just no hope to go forward with someone like that. For 4 people out of the 7, Nick does not want to go to the final with you. So that's it.
And this is why I wanted you to tell me all of this earlier when I was about to say him at number 4, because you would have been able to easily convince me to move him down. I have no confidence in Nick being 4th. I just feel like the Godfather's prediction was so good when he said that Nick was going to be final 6. I don't know. I mean, but Nick, it makes sense for Nick to go this week. I feel like Nick and Denise, I feel like Denise is probably a little bit more of that person who everybody can kind of get behind. Everybody, Tony has no relationship with Denise. Tony is ready to just be like, goodbye, Denise, get out of here.
Yeah.
So that's why I put Denise at 7, but it could make sense for Nick to get the boot this week for sure.
Yeah. And Denise is right behind, I have no faith that Denise lasts, because remember, she is the Queen Slayer, right? Nobody forgot that. We're not talking about it, but nobody forgot that. And I think they're just going to look at what her allegiance have been. She just voted for Jeremy, I just found out. So later for that relationship. So, you know what I mean? Denise has nothing left. Her best bet was keeping that Kim, Nick, Denise, right? That core. And now that we've seen the power shift in one direction, I don't see how they get it back. I don't see how it makes sense unless Ben, to me, is the wild card here. Ben, to me, is the one who could figure out that Tony's not the way to go. And if Ben jumps, then maybe he can corral some energy against them. But I just don't see Ben doing that. So yeah, I think it's a 1-2 punch with Nick and Denise.
Yeah. All right. Well, now that we've talked about who you think's going this week, before we let you go, who you got winning the entire season?
Oh, man. Well, my winner pick obviously is Jeremy. I'm a huge Jeremy fan. I stand the man, and I think he's playing an amazing game. And it would just be such a feel good moment for him to pull it out, especially after the season that he's been having. Are you kidding me?
I know.
Imagine what his speech is going to be sitting in those seats. Ah, man. He did it for Val, guys. He did it for Bao.
It's his. I sitting next to him at tribal council, he would smoke, or final tribal, he'd smoke anybody because he's just
Yes.
such a good storyteller, so charismatic. He's fantastic.
Yes, and of the people who are left, he has the best relationships with the jury, because we forget that's a factor here, right? Like, there is a jury, there is a group of people who know these players very, very well, right? So could you imagine, first of all, everyone who's over there now, somehow Michele gets over there, somehow, people that he's worked with are over there, Natalie's over there, right? Like, come on, like they're going to campaign the mess out for Jeremy. So I think he would be a lock to win if he makes it at the final three. I think Tony thinks he could beat Jeremy, but that would be a battle. That would be because I think that would be the best. That would be story versus game, right? Like, I think Tony has the better game, Jeremy has the better story, and what wins in this Winners of War season. It's up to those guys. So I don't know which one will win out.
Yeah. I feel like Tony's got a clearer path to get there. So I'd give the edge to Tony right now, but I've just said the entire season, like, Jeremy just impresses me every time. Everything he does, I'm like, man, he just reads people so well. And he's been kind of on the wrong side of everything since the beginning, but like not by his own doing. Just the fact that he starts on a tribe with Natalie, and then, then he starts to get get like a grasp on the season, but then the other tribe just has more people, and he's kind of had to be battling uphill the entire time, but he can make it work. He really can, and he's made it work thus far. I'd love to see Jeremy keep going, but I do just think Tony's path is a little bit clearer at this point than Jeremy's.
What is sad though is I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be Tony either. Like, I think really falls short of the final. These past few Survivor seasons have ended, in a way that's a little bit of a letdown, in that these characters that you're pulling for fall by design, right? Like, people figure it out. Like, like certain characters from past seasons, if they were sitting in the final three, would win, and they figure that out and they know that, so they don't let them get there, right? So I could completely see like Ben, Nick, Denise or Michele, Denise, Nick final three, and that wouldn't be the most exciting one for me, but smart move on their part if they end up putting that together, because there's no chance that they win against anybody else sitting there. So I'm preparing my soul for this moment when we're looking at a final three and we're just like, okay, season 40, okay.
But if Michele is sitting in the final three against them, Jamal, I'm going to be ecstatic. I'm going to be so pumped. I mean,
okay, good.
I would be so
happy for you, Phil.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That was a dream final three, Jamal. I don't know how you just came up with that on the spot, but thank you for that.
I put it out in the atmosphere for you.
I kept on kind of saying this. I think it was in the Nick podcast, but I kept saying, is this going to be a dust settles kind of winner? And that seems to be what you're thinking. There's this chaos. And I just watched Marquesas, and it's the dust settling Vecepia versus Nalia. Really? What just happened? And like, you see that in a lot of seasons, like, especially of late, Chris Underwood's a dust settling kind of winner, like Rick and Victoria and Julie, and they all went through this chaos, and then Chris comes out the victor, and we see that a lot in newer school seasons. So I wonder if that would happen here. And who would be like that, that Bob Crowley, where it's like they just won a season that had like who on it? How did that just like, it's really unbelievable, but it could easily happen.
Really could. And it was always a possibility, right? Because of the design of Winners at War, right? Like, you just had these gigantic characters. I mean, look at Edge of Extinction right now. Like, that's not by accident that those gigantic people are over there, because they just were going to take each other out. And these, low riding, under the radar type players, we're gonna stick around. So yeah, that would be sad for me, but it would make a lot of sense for them. I'd be happy for them.
I wish there was more content around, but I know why they don't do this. More content around who makes fire. Because this whole conversation, I feel like we'd be able to kind of pick a swim lane if we knew who was making fire at any point throughout the past 36 days, 30 days. I know they do that to, obviously, what was that?
You mean like at camp? Like, who's like...
Yeah, because I know we said, okay, like Tony has to get through 4 different tribal councils. Jeremy has to get through another 4 tribal councils. Has Tony made a fire? Is Jeremy secretly amazing at making fire? Because I think that could be a huge benefit to them. Because we that's just something as a viewer you don't really see anymore, but that's such an important factor now when you're going into the final 5 vote.
Yeah, no, you're so right about that. Like even for my season, like you knew that Elaine and Janet were firemakers. Like that was part of their story. It was part of the like narrative of what was going on. And you're right. We don't really have much of the survival aspect of the story here. Why would somebody choose to send people to make fire, based on what they understand to be their fire making skills? Like Nora sent Dean, right? Yeah. Because she knew that he was going to be the one to make fire, and Tommy said that he couldn't make fire, right? So that was part of it. I don't know what would factor into that decision. Like what, yeah, you're right, Alexa. What goes into the final immunity winner's decision to send 2 people to make fire against each other? I'm very curious to find out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think we'll start to see that storyline kind of, Jamal, you were saying, once the Edge of Extinction storyline ends, once it's like we figure out the fire turns on, I feel like a lot of the finale, we're going to start to see like a little bit more focus on like Tony's been making fires the whole time, or Sarah's been making fires the whole time, or something like that. Right. That's going to bring a little bit more light to why the 2 people who make fire against each other are making fire.
Do you think then that like that moment, whatever it is, whatever it looks like, the moment when the 2 people making fire against each other gets decided, that moment is going to be a backstab of some kind, right? Like it has to, right? So like, could be. Sarah wins the last immunity and sends Tony to make fire. That's gonna hurt.
Yeah,
that's gonna be a tough thing to witness and have watch Tony navigate, and vice versa. Like all the way around, you can kind of see like the moment when you get to decide who gets to make fire, you're straining a relationship there, and I guess that's by design.
And the one thing I don't see happening on this season is I don't see somebody winning that final 3 immunity and giving up their spot to go make fire against somebody. Like I don't see Sarah winning and then saying, I'm going to give it up and go make fire against Tony. I think that she would take her chances against Tony in a final 3. I really do. And I think she thinks that she could beat Tony in a final 3 because her social game is so good. So I don't see a crazy give up unless it's the person from Edge, because they have to, but I don't see it otherwise.
Not even then. No, I think all these players feel very confident in their story. I think every single one of them
you're right.
and will feel confident that they could, sell the reason why they should win. I think the whole giving up of your immunity to go make the fire, that was to make your story. These guys have their story. They feel like they've made it. So yeah, I don't see that happening this time around.
And they've told their stories and won before. They've all pitched to themselves and got what they wanted out of it.
Crazy. We've never been at this point in Survivor season where we can say like the final 3 have all been in the final 3 before, and they've pitched it and they've all won it.
And like that's the thing too. Like if you look at somebody like Nick or Michele, who you might be saying, are they really like deserving of this? Can they make this pitch? Michele did pitch to beat Aubrey, and Nick did pitch to beat Mike White, who like we as a viewer might not have thought Mike White was great, but like the people out there really liked Mike White's game, and like they thought that he played very good. So they've kind of beaten people that maybe some of the jury members were coming into that final tribal saying we're going to vote for them.
Yeah.
It's going to give a false confidence, I feel, in this situation. I don't think either of them could go out there and be like, yeah, I'm going to beat Tony or Sarah or Jeremy at this point. But you still have that confidence that you could do it because you have done it before. And I think that's that's a huge thing. Nobody's going to come into this like the Amanda Kimmel and just be like, everybody knows how to pitch themselves to the jury and what points to hit.
Here's another factor we haven't talked about yet is what has the jury witnessed so far? And I think that doesn't play enough into the discussion about who wins. Is like, okay, like you said, we see the ongoings back at camp and who says what and all that. But these tribals are ridiculous, right? Like how does the jury get a sense of who is responsible for what move? Like we've had 4 or 5 tribals where it's been chaos and whispering and getting up and all of this and them like trying to follow. We have the subtitles now, but they don't, right? So how do they think Kim went home? Like who do they attribute that to? How do they feel about these final few players based on what they've seen in terms of tribal performance? That's got to be a fascinating thing that we'll learn more about at Final Tribal.
And Kim, Phil's stuck, so I don't know who's supposed to go.
Good.
I froze.
Hi, but this will be quick. And usually the person who gets voted out, not usually, but sometimes they'll have an idea of how that happened. Kim probably doesn't know who spearheaded her going home, because it very well, in her mind, it could have just been, oh, my name just came up, or she probably wasn't putting two and two together immediately that, oh, I was targeting Tony and now Tony's throwing this back at me. So the jury could even be getting incorrect information because the person voted out doesn't even know why they're voted out.
Mm-hmm. And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jamal. No, I want to hear it.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, whoever goes home next, it's gonna be Nick, just because. But when Nick goes to Edge, what's his story to the people at Edge of Extinction about Kim's vote out, right, or about Sophie's vote out? And so you actually have to now start thinking about, okay, whose perspective is getting the first crack at the explanation of why those people went home and who's responsible for that. And then once they find out who's responsible for that, does that help in terms of who they vote for? Is that a detriment? Like, is Kim pissed at Tony, right, for taking that turn? Or does Kim say, good job, you have my vote? I don't know.
That's exactly what I was just going to say too. Like, I'm thinking like somebody like Michelle's voted wrong. I feel like almost every single tribal council on this season, like most of them, like 85%. But the people that she's not voting out, like if Kim doesn't know who to attribute her boot to and then gets pissed off at who voted her out, like remember, Kim gave her tokens to Denise, Michele, and to Sarah.
Yeah.
If Michelle sits at final 3 next to Tony and Jeremy, does Kim vote for Michelle? Because Kim didn't, like, giving a token to somebody is kind of like saying, I hope you pull this off.
That was a women's thing, though?
Could be. I mean, I did love the Game of Thrones meme where it was just Daenerys and Missandei walking out, and it was like, whatever it was, like, we are not men or something like that, where it was like, when you just,
seen that.
Oh, it was so funny. But I mean, it could be, but I just think, like, if you're paying attention to maybe who's giving the fire tokens to who, that's going to be a fun thing to kind of go back and watch when the season's over. Mm-hmm. Who gave their fire tokens to who, and especially as the game goes on, and then who did they vote for?
That's
like,
true.
Did they vote for the person who they were aligned with? Because I know Michelle's not doing this. So anybody who thinks I'm just standing too hard, but I know she's not doing this. But let's say like a strategy came to be with fire tokens. Vote with these people so you get their fire tokens, right, even though you might know they're going home. I mean, she really thought Jeremy was going last week and he wasn't, but you start to say, I want the fire tokens.
Yeah. Well, this is the centerpiece of Yule's whole strategy, which is what sent him home, right? He tried to concoct this whole thing like, well, if you vote with them against me and then they think that you voted with them, they'll give you the fire tokens, but give me one of them. So that whole thing was trying to take that into account for sure.
The chat
and if you though that Kim does kind of know, because Nick told her that Ben told Tony that Kim was the one who was trying to get Tony. So I just wonder if she's more in the know than
that's true.
But I do think it'll be interesting, you know, people who were giving fire tokens to other people clearly because they're aligned with them. If that person has voted wrong every time, if they get to final 3, do you give them your vote like you gave them your fire token, or do you change it and say, no, I got to give it to the person who got me because they just played better?
Awesome. So what is the mentality of the cast of Winners at War? Who do they want to represent their season?
You would think the best player.
I think so, right? Yeah. I think there's no grudges here. I think they just want someone to be like crowned the ultimate of ultimates, best survivor ever. I think Tony right now that I've said that out loud, I don't know how you don't vote for Tony if he's sitting
right there. But then again, if you have Tony and Jeremy in that final 2, because I think Jeremy is someone who could be in that conversation if he's in that final 3. I think I really want the 2 of them there because I think that they would have the best fight. Not fight, but they would have the best back and forth.
Story versus game,
and think about this too. You have a lot of these winners, and this is not a knock on the winners, but a lot of these winners have a little jealousy where it's like, I want to be the best winner. I want to be the best winner. I want to be the best winner. What if some of these guys, let's say like Sarah sits at final 3 and she's sitting there against Tony and she's sitting there against Jeremy. you could sit there and say, if you're one of the men, I'm going to vote for Sarah. So she's not, so there's no 2-time male winner. And then the women could say, let's vote for Sarah because it'll piss off Sandra, who quit the game and left and got her. Like I know that this is like getting ridiculous, but like there's these things that like people think about that nothing goes out the window in an all winner season. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, Sarah, let's just go ahead and put on the record that if Sarah wins, Sarah will have won it outright in her own right. Like,
agreed.
Absolutely.
I completely agree.
100% earned the W for sure.
Agreed.
And I think this is going to be so interesting to compare how this ends, because just between Edge of Extinction season 38 and how this one went. Because if Natalie's a great example, if Natalie comes back, if Natalie's pitching herself, or no, excuse me, I'm going the complete opposite way. Natalie stays on the jury. Jeremy is in this final 3. Normally, it'd be like if Wendy's in the final 3 and Reem is on the jury and like Reem's voting for Wendy. Like normally that relationship is so like broken because they haven't really communicated past that first vote. But I think when you have such a close relationship like Natalie and Jeremy, I think she will vote for him. And that's a perfectly valid reason to vote for him. So I think the prior relationships are now really going to shine through, especially with the people who were voted out early. Like, who is Ethan going to vote for?
Probably somebody who comes back from Edge.
Do you think so? What if you have a Tony, Sarah, Denise final 3? Who is Ethan going to vote for?
I don't know, because he doesn't know any of them. And then it would just come to what he's seen. And like Jamal said earlier, like we don't really know what they've seen because they don't have the subtitles. They don't really we don't really know.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. That part I'm interested to see.
I can't wait to see how this plays out. We only have 2 episodes left, 5 hours of Survivor left.
Oh gosh. And then
a lot of content.
What's going on? Are they filming 41 and 42 yet? Like, what's the deal?
No, they can't yet. I mean, Jamal, what's your take? When do you think? Nick Mariano asked us this so people know our kind of takes. When do you think they would film season 41? When do you think it's realistic they could pull it off?
When it's realistic to pull it off?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if this remdesivir
he looked it up.
If drug is anything that they say it is, I think we figure this out by the summer and off they go. You know, who knows? Maybe, you know, the United States is probably not the safest place to be when it comes to COVID-19. So they might be doing them a favor by shipping them out to Fiji in the middle of nowhere. So I think they should get out there sooner than later, to be honest.
I think it could happen. We were saying, Alexa and I were saying the fall. Even before, but this was before remdesivir, which by the way, like I need like what is it, like Hooked on Phonics was like that old school thing. It was like I need like to figure out what
you
this
need
word.
Google Translate to actually say it out loud.
I have no idea what it is, but that we were saying that before any like treatments and stuff were coming up, and it was just like you got to think like, what is it, the people always say like the American way, we're gonna find American ingenuity, we're gonna find something. And like, granted, this is a worldwide thing right now. This is everybody in the world. And you got to think like the human race, man, like done some pretty amazing things. You know, I'm not putting it past anybody to find something. Yeah. If this works, maybe it makes people feel a little bit more comfortable to be like, hey, we can go somewhere. So we were saying the fall before this. I'm still going to stick with the fall, but
man, no, because I have a little insider knowledge in having talked to a couple of producers, and the schedule for filming Survivor it wasn't always what it is now. So they have filmed a whole entire season over the summer and aired it in the fall. So they're actually feeling pretty confident that they're going to hit their fall deadline. If they can get out like June, July, like if they can get out there, they might hit their deadlines for the fall.
That is the best thing I've heard.
I'm wiping tears away from my eyes, Jamal. I don't know if your sources are real people. I don't even care. As far as I'm concerned, you just told me Santa Claus is real, and I believe you.
Wow, I
do.
love that.
I love that. So, but yeah, hopefully, man, and I could see something happening. And I mean, hey, every day, we were talking about this a little bit before, but like you said, Jamal, like the news is like even is always getting better. I feel like, and we know so much more than we did on April 3rd, and what we knew on March 3rd, and what we knew on February, like. Getting closer every day is one day closer, and so who knows?
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. But
let us know as you get more insight.
Yeah.
I will.
And Survivor Jamal at gmail.com is about to break the internet because everybody's about to be like, what did you hear?
Well, I
Where did
mean, what is an email address if not like an Instagram handle, right? It's the same stuff. So
I'm so excited to see the emails you get over the next.
yeah.
week
I'll
or
take
so.
screenshots and put them on my Instagram story.
I love that. All right, Alexa, you want to take us home, Alexa? We'll get out of here. And
All right, even though we've all been home for 6 weeks already, so I'm not changing too much up. But this Wednesday we'll be back about 5 or 10 minutes after the episode on East Coast time. So we'll actually be live at 10 p.m. Eastern, which is the latest I have stayed up in 2 months at this point. So everyone, get your coffee ready. But follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Apparently, we're very close to the coveted 8,000 subscribers on YouTube. Give us 5 stars on iTunes, which is the platform I completely forgot. Listen to us on Spotify. And make sure to email Jamal at survivorjamal@gmail.com for any and all questions about anything. So, Jamal, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast having you.
This is a good time. Thank you so much.
Everyone, wash your hands, stay inside, and we will hopefully be watching Survivor in September of 2020.
Love that.